All right, everybody. It's great to have you along. Thank you very much for coming to listen to us. I am absolutely going to guarantee you something here, which is that you are going to really enjoy this conversation. These are going to be a series of conversations I'm going to have with Matt and a number of other people, both within his company, UX Consultancy, but we're also going to pull in some subject matter experts and some really interesting expertise outside of that circle as well, and really have some very honest and open conversations moving forward. And so I am happy to be joined by Matt Goddard today, who is the managing director of UX Consultancy. Matt and I should say, in full transparency, have known each other for many, many years. He's a terrific guy. What I really have always ever enjoyed about our relationship is his openness, his honesty, his undying enthusiasm for the work that he does. And I think the other thing that's really kind of fun is that every time I get into a conversation with him, I always ever kind of find myself, I guess, intellectually more broadened than I was before, because he brings different angles to this process. And what we're going to be talking about today is a bit about what a UX consultancy is up to, but importantly, what Matt and his team, and I'm hopefully going to be helping them out as well with this, is bringing to the market, because I think it's a very unique and very clever kind of approach to cutting through all of the noise and cacophony of activity that's going on in AI and business. And it's got everybody just whirling and twirling and hiring all sorts of very fancy consultancies and so forth, but not really ending up with results that truly improve value, reduce cost and time, and radically improve the business. And I think that's kind of what we're on about today. So this is going to be an open and honest conversation with Matt Goddard. I'm really happy to have him here. Matt, can you do us a favor and just give us a bit of a view as to who you are and your background and how it is you came to launching UX consultancy, and then we'll get into some of the cool stuff that you guys have done.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. And you're so very kind in your introduction. UX Consultancy is we're a user experience consultancy. These days, we tend to work more in product than straight UX and, sort of usability testing, research and stuff like that. We tend to do the full end-to-end delivery.
Hmm.
But my background really is so I started my career as a software engineer. I then uh, went rogue and became a user experience consultant. Um, and so I launched UX consultancy in 2002, when UX was really three or four separate disciplines. So it was traditionally at the time it was interaction design, information architecture, accessibility, and user research were the sort of four main areas. And then, of course, that's homogenized over the years to become what we all know as UX, your user experience design now, really.
Right.
So um, over the course of the last 21 years, we've worked with companies of all different shapes and sizes. We work with some big FTSE 100 companies, helping them to align their user and business needs in the sort of digital product space.
Okay.
And we do a lot of partnership with agencies, so they will often bring us in to work with them on their design and UX and strategy work. So that's the background on us. Obviously, over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, I suppose, we've been now much more focused on what the impact of artificial intelligence is on businesses and user experience, and
Right.
how we can apply that sort of human first approach to uh, digital product delivery. So that's kind
Got
of
it.
the potted history.
No, it's a really interesting history. I was going to ask you this though. At what point or I should say, what was your thinking when you decided as a software engineer that you were now going to kind of switch gears a little bit and kind of focus on UX? What was sort of the precipitating set of
Uh,
events?
um, this is going to sound really lame, but in 2003, my daughter was born, and I was a I was a proper software engineer. I wasn't just doing sort of simple things. Um, but I decided that when Ellie was born, if I was going to spend my time away from my family working on things, and I wanted it to have meaning,
Right.
and what I understood, I got simultaneously, I got sick of just putting things in and out of databases. It
Okay.
didn't seem like there was a lot of
Not
there
a lot of
wasn't
purpose in that, is
no,
there?
no, there wasn't a lot of purpose in that. So I really shifted my thinking to how do we make software meaningful, useful, and usable to people, really.
Mhm.
And so I read a whole bunch of books. I suppose the book that really changed my mind at that point was a book by a guy called Alan Cooper. He was the father of Visual Basic, which tells you how long
All
ago.
right.
Uh,
Blimey. Even I remember that one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Tell you how long ago I read that book. But he wrote a book called The Inmates Running the Asylum. And that was a book about how um essentially how the geeks won.
Right.
You have to remember he's an American guy raised at a certain time in American history. So there was this sort of jock culture versus geek culture, and so his book was the geeks won, but actually, are we have they really won? And what he meant by that was, um, if you are so focused on engineering and software development and stuff like that, then are you really taking into account your users' needs? There,
Right.
in the old days of UX, we used to talk about um, the craft as a three-legged stool, and it was supposed to be a marriage between user needs, business needs, and technical needs.
Mhm.
And over the course of my career, I've seen different. It's going to be a terrible, terrible metaphor, Jeff, but just bear with me a second.
Thanks for the warning. Okay.
The different legs of the stool were exerting different levels of influence over a certain time.
Sure.
There's a lot of discussion these days around like UX is dying because product owners and business people are driving product development, and user experience people need to be. So that's just a manifestation of the business needs taking precedence over technical or user needs. I'm still a purist in the sense that I still believe that we need synergy around that. I've never been a user researcher into the extent where I think that it's a um I mean, undoubtedly it is a psychological um science, but
Mhm.
I've never felt the need to want to become a an ethnographer or somebody that is so interested in the human condition that I want to express that through my research into software development. Because the
Yeah.
reality is that companies build these things to either make money or save money or what have you. That's the reality of modern
Sure.
software engineering and user experience. So I've always been very practical, very pragmatic about that approach. But what I did realize was that I wanted to make sure that the things that I built had longevity, and the way that I felt they should have longevity is be by being so useful to people that they don't want to stop using them.
Got it.
And I don't mean that in the horrible sort of doom scrolling sense where you're playing on dopamine receptor hits in order to get
Yeah.
people to use things. I want my tools to be so intuitive and easy to use that it
Yeah.
becomes just an extension of your need to complete a task rather than an hindrance to you completing that task. So that's the thing that um, got me into UX. And I suppose and then of course, you read the classics from Don Norman, Design of Everyday Things, you read the Jacob Nielsen books. Um, and in those days, you really did only learn through the books that you bought.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot on the internet about that.
Right.
So, I was very fortunate enough to start my career at the stage when the internet was taking off, when digital products could be meaningful and accessible and available to people rather than, you having to, buy expensive software packages that you had to install via
Yeah.
floppy disk. Um,
I remember all that too, obviously, because as people can tell just by looking at the glorious color of my antique blonde hair. Um, I have been around and have seen the entire kind of thing fire up, literally from this is what we call a PC, all the way through getting my very first Mac whilst I
Yeah,
was in university, and it was all in alignment with 1984. Interestingly, that incredible advertising campaign. So there we were, stood in line with our $500 check, to get a
yeah,
box that had no hard memory in it. A
yeah,
mouse, which nobody had ever seen used before, and a wonderful springy little keyboard. And that was it. That was your introduction to the world. And all of this well before, obviously, to your point, the internet even
yeah,
came about. And I was one of the first folks to kind of jump on that. I should say it was 1996, not exactly the first, but I bought that big giant box that had AOL, America Online, kind of like
yeah,
built into it. I was like, oh my God, I need to install the box.
yeah,
Only to realize it was a big manual and like one disc. But anyway, that was my intro to the internet. But having said that, I've always ever been absolutely super fond of and excited about amazing design because there is nothing that feels more natural, more fun, more engaging than intuitively understanding from screen to screen, from function to function, button to button, whatever the case, a flow state that
yeah,
basically kind of feels like, oh, isn't this lovely? I mean, this is and it's thinking for me in a way. It's kind of thinking ahead of me, which is great because it kind of feels like it knows me. You know what I mean? Like all those sort of
yeah,
psychological components. But I have to say, man, it was so slow and so painful in coming. We are dealing with the Microsofts of the world and everything else, and that was like the closest thing we all got, to a shared experience about this. And we were just overwhelmed. I mean, like
yeah,
120,000 buttons and possibilities to kind of like dive into it. All of us had to go take classes to figure out how to use it and everything else. But that was that
100%.
choppy kind of, difficult kind of experience leading up to us. Let's fast forward really quickly now to 3 years ago. 4 years, let's call it 2 years ago, because year one, when OpenAI released, what was it, was it 2.5 or was it 3.0? I can't remember, about 3 years ago. It was it was a magic box game. It was something out of a cereal box, kind of prize, that did something fantastic and wild and wonderful. And you're like, what the hell is this thing? What would I
Yeah,
use it for? And then suddenly people just got on it and they were just like, oh my God, you have no idea the power of this. And in addition, all of this, all of these models just started coming out with faster and bigger and smarter, kind of ways of doing things. The number of objects that they were sorted on, trained on, suddenly went from millions to billions, and then from billions, like it was nothing. Billions, I think, lasted a week, and then now we're on to trillions. You know
yeah,
what I mean? It truly
yeah,
is eye-opening. I don't know about your experience, Matt, but my experience with this, primarily OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Claude from Anthropic, has been life-changing. And it's been the change I've always ever wanted to see come from him. I'm an old Star Trekkie type, from way
yeah,
back, right? And in 2001, A Space Odyssey, and all these other kinds of things. I lived in sci-fi in hopes that sci-fi was just around the corner because, wow, this would just be amazing. And it feels to me like this is what's happening. Okay, that these tools, in fact, are powerful enough to do some truly life-changing things, not just at a human level, but at an organizational level. And frankly, I mean, across any kind of like structure. I will shut up in a second because I want to hear more from you. But can you tell me what the sort of impact of all of this seems to have been? Maybe even share your own experience with, kind of early experimentation with this stuff, and how do you see it kind of unfolding for all of us at this point?
uh, sure. I mean, I think I'm gonna just pull back slightly for a second because
Yeah, go
in
for it.
about 8 years ago, I suppose now, Microsoft released in Microsoft Azure, in the Microsoft Azure platform, they released something that they called their Microsoft Cognitive Services.
All
And
right.
inside the Microsoft Cognitive Services packages are a whole bunch of different libraries. So a computer vision library, there was a natural language processing library, and things like that. These were all very early. the reason they call them cognitive services was because they're basically AI services.
Right.
But we didn't really, at the time, there wasn't a common name. There was no such thing as generative AI. And of course, what we've got to remember is when we think about AI right now, what most people are talking about with regards to AI is generative AI. And
Right.
that's only been, as you say, that's only really been around in the mainstream, to be
Yep.
clear. There's going to be loads of people that are very well versed in AI that might be listening to us and they're like, oh no, that didn't happen then.
Yeah, it's been around since the
Yeah,
1950s. Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
let's just take it from a sort of a normal person's point of view, and I'll explain why I absolutely consider myself to be a normal person in the instance of AI, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um, so Microsoft released these cognitive services, and I had taken a look at one of their product called Lewis, Luis. I can't remember what the acronym stands for now, but it was um, a natural language processing tool.
Okay.
And so what you had to do was you put text input into it, and then you would train it to try and understand the intent of the textual input that you gave it, and then based upon it recognizing the intent, you could get it to do things for you. So I created a little bot in Slack,
Okay.
and I would say to this bot, which I called Wilson. um,
Right.
I don't know
Of
whether I
course.
named it off. I don't know whether I named it after the ball in Castaway, or whether I had in my brain had sort of realized that, like Wilson was in House MD, the TV show. Wilson was his sidekick, and I kind of thought, it'd be quite cool.
Right.
Anyway, so I created this little bot which I called Wilson, and I could say things to it like, "What is the team working on today?"
Yeah.
And then it would register the intent. The intent is find I don't know find team work or something. I can't remember. I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly what it is now. And then
Okay.
given that intent, it would then connect to Trello, which is a Kanban board, and it
Sure.
would filter the board by the person's name or everyone's name, and then it would give me a list back of all the work that was in the doing column for every
Right.
person. It would send me a list back and it would say, the team is working on this thing, and it would create a list for me. And then I could
Okay.
say, well, hang on a second. John Smith's name's not on there. So I could say, well, what's John working on? And it would say, okay, that's an intent of, what's John working on intent. It would connect to Trello again. It would say, well, what is John working on? So it'd look in the up next and the done columns, and it would figure out what had John done in those columns, and it would return a list saying, um, John's not working on anything at the moment, but he's got this coming up and he's just completed this. And
All
so it
right.
started to give me an idea. So that was my first.
That's pretty
Um,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
Nice
was.
one.
Do you know, it was magical. It was one of those things where suddenly the world seemed like magic, and it reminded me in 2007 when the iPhone 4 came out, and they released Siri for the first time.
Sure.
And I imagined this world where I could say to Siri, "Oh, like let's imagine I'm in London for work, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be late for the train. So I could say to Siri, "Oh darn it, I'm going to be late for the train. Can you tell me when the next train is available, please?" And
Sure.
this was my like the promise in my mind. This is what I thought was going to
Yeah.
happen.
Got
And
it.
of course, Siri came out, and it wasn't as good as all that at the time.
It was
Although,
proper rubbish, to be honest.
well,
It
remember
kind of did some cool things, but
at the
yeah.
time it was kind of amazing,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it wasn't as good as what generative and
It
that
wasn't
AI
like the
is
full
now.
thing. It wasn't
Yeah,
like Captain
yeah.
Kirk saying, "Hey, computer, tell
Absolutely.
me,
Yeah,
give
yeah,
me this." And it's like, yeah.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
I kind of kept an eye on the space. I didn't really do much more with it then. I kept an eye on the space, and I was always reading around it. And then I think maybe 2 years ago, as you say, I remember distinctly, it was in October time, and I'd seen all this AI stuff coming out, and I was at this point where I was a definite bystander, and I was thinking, why on earth would I tell my computer to guess what I want versus me just telling it what I want? I know how to write code, so I can write a little script to do something. Why would I get it to guess at
Yeah.
doing that? And then I checked myself, and I thought, you know what, Matt? Do you know who you remind me of? And so I answered to myself, um, and I reminded myself of the established business people
Yeah.
who kept telling me when I was first in my career, when the internet was new, and people were
Yep.
saying, no one's going to buy shoes online. No clothes online. No one's going to buy blah 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 online.
That's right.
And I remember, and I distinctly remember, oh my goodness, I am now the people that are going to be disrupted by this technology
Yeah,
because
right.
I do not see I didn't see the point of it. So then I thought, this is going to be big. I know it's going to be big because everyone's telling me it's going to be big. So let's just believe that for a second. And so I purposely and very deliberately at that point, then decided to try and figure out what AI is, what
Right.
can it do, how might I, as someone who runs a small to medium-sized business, utilize this tool to enable me to do things that I've never been able to do before. And that's kind of the genesis of what had happened. So I'd been writing a load of articles about accelerated digital delivery, things about making sure that you have a consistent approach to delivery, that make sure you are using Kanban boards because that's a good way of visualizing your throughput through a business, all that type of stuff. So really like
Yeah.
foundational thinking around deliberate accelerated delivery rather than just like trying to get all your team just to
Is
work
that
fast.
like is that like workflows I hear everybody talking about,
Yeah.
like trying to understand?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it
Okay.
was. And so we had built a whole bunch of playbooks and things about how to structure your software development team in order to be aligned to accelerated digital delivery process rather than just, agile, where you may continue, where you would just end up doing things in a scrum way because, all you're doing is just smaller iterations on a waterfall
Yeah,
process, which
little
is
sprints here and there to kind of like create a thing, launch
yeah,
it, go on
yeah.
to the next. Yeah,
Whereas
right.
whereas for me, delivery is all about what is the smallest unit of value that you can deliver that has provides meaning to a business or to a set of people. And so so that was the principle. Anyway, we'd started writing all this stuff around that, and then obviously generative AI came along, and I was like, oh my God, everything that I was talking about with regards to accelerated digital delivery has been blown out of the water now because here's a
Yeah,
tool that truly accelerates your delivery but without you needing to, reformulate your working
yeah.
practices and stuff. I mean, yes,
Right.
you do, and so that's kind of how it happened. So basically, I was petrified that I'd become obsolete.
But isn't that the weird feeling about this whole thing? Because over and over again, people have built businesses off the back of the releases of the latest, large language model or whatever the case, right? And then literally in a matter of a month and a half, they'd come out with a complete rewrite or a new application or a new
Yeah.
something and like literally just like smote like 1,000 businesses
Well,
that had kind of just grown
yeah.
up in its shadow. You know what I mean?
And this is a challenge about what's happened in the last 2 years, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you think about last year, right? Last year, everybody got access to essentially ChatGPT.
yeah.
There were some people that were using Claude, but like
And
ChatGPT,
perplexity and stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
right.
But ChatGPT was
That was the Mac
was the
Daddy.
tool that everybody went to
Yeah.
because that's all everyone was talking about.
Yep.
And so we were all using that to proofread documents to craft emails, but those emails would only be presented back to you with inside the chat tool.
Yep.
It was very chat based. It was a chat based interface that was just contained within its own sphere.
Yeah.
So
Right.
prompt engineering is really important. Context is really important because you suddenly had to start thinking about how you were going to give it information so that it could be much smarter. And so people we'd gone through this sort of adoption curve in last year. There was this sort of adoption curve where everyone was really excited about the prospect, and then they kind of got to a point where they're like, oh, this doesn't really do a great deal, does it? It's really fancy, it's really clever, but it's not doing anything for me. If you think about the promise of AI a year ago, that it's going to do all this automation, it was going to do all these other things, but in order to do any of that, you had to use a whole bunch of other tools. You had to use NAN or Make.com or
Or
Power
lovable
Automate
or
or
yeah.
Lovable or any
Right.
of those things. You had to use a whole bunch of other tools who are
Yeah.
using exactly the same large language models that you're using,
Yeah.
but they hadn't been configured and built to do things for you yet.
Yeah,
So
they were like pockets of like of hyper intelligence, but only
yeah,
within the sphere of what it kind of can do and can know. And then to your
yeah,
point, unless you connected it with something that could do something else with that information,
yeah,
it just sort of sat there static and you're like, okay, do I just wait for a new release or
yeah.
like how's this going to
So,
come about? Yeah.
so Jeff, we've talking about this, but spoken about this before, but it's worth probably now just thinking a little bit about the AI adoption model that
Yes.
we've discussed. So there are four stages, I think, in AI adoption, and that is bystander to conversationalist, conversationalist to automator, automator to orchestrator.
Got it.
So I think that's how it went. And so your bystander to conversationalist is the shift that started last year.
Right.
It was a shift to get you from to move from what is the point of this AI to using it in a conversational sense in a chatbot window so that you could do things. And that's what I call sort of like phase one conversationist, where you're asking it questions, you're using it like Google, right?
Yeah. Right.
Then you have a delineation with inside the conversationist. So you have a conversationist who is then a co-worker. So you are getting it to do things for you. So you're getting it to draft an email, to proofread a document, maybe to do some calculations on a spreadsheet that you've given it. So
Yeah. Right.
so you become a conversationist who's co-working with the AI.
And
And that,
would you say that most people are kind of there in that space right now or hovering around it?
do you know what? It's the truth is, Jeff, and I think it's really difficult to say at the moment because um I think I'm probably just going to completely make up this number, and I don't mean to. So please just forgive me
Yeah.
if
No, it's all
these
right.
numbers are not correct.
We'll fact check you later,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
But I think in the world, there's only like low double figures of people that are using AI.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So in our world, I think most people that we know will be using it, will be transitioned from being a bystander to a conversationalist because they are given access to um, Copilot and other things.
Yeah, right.
Um, but within the context of the whole world, you know, like that number is still
Still
vanishingly
quite
small.
small. Interesting.
And also, even to the extent, I think Anthropic released a thing the other day that said that that of the in a knowledge work, they believe that Claude is capable of automating 94% of a knowledge worker's job or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah.
But
Evan, yeah, Dario
yeah,
said, yeah.
but what they also recognized was that people who are using it are only using it up to 30% of its capability. So that
Right.
means there's this gap, there's this massive gap between a 60 odd percent gap between the people that the things that AI can currently do versus the things that people are actually using it for. And so I think there's this nuance between um, the hype cycle that we're in with regards to AI versus the reality of the situation. So I see a lot of people are still in that using it like Google phase.
Yeah.
So they're in the
Yeah.
first part of the conversationalist phase. I think there are some people who are moving into the co-working phase of a conversationalist. And there are very few people currently really. I I know it doesn't seem if you're into AI like we
Yeah.
are, the idea of saying very few people are in the automator or the orchestrator phase. But I think genuinely, if we were to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
honest about the space, you know, that we're looking at small percentages of people that are using it in that way at the moment.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree. Well, what's interesting about what you just said, Matt, if I could just kind of back you up a little bit, we talked about sort of like 2004 being very much around like noise, noise, noise. Look at this, fireworks going off, and everyone's having a bit of a fun play with it. And then 2025 was very much like, this thing actually has, this thing has teeth. This thing has a brain. Like,
yeah,
holy cow, you can get it to do some pretty intense stuff. And that's when I think the C-level folks were sort of jumping on the bandwagon and kind of yelling at their people saying, hey, go figure out this AI thing, right? And if there's an advantage to be eked out, then let's go check it out. We'd also heard loads and loads of noise coming from tech shops primarily, who were
yeah,
saying it wasn't a direct impact of AI, but clearly an impact from AI in that they were needing to clear the decks, having sort of looked 4 and 5 years ahead and realized, wow, Dario Amadeo is probably not far off right in terms of saying that at least 50 to 75% of all white collar jobs, mostly middle management and certainly early careers, likely could be eventually managed by tools like AI and automated to a degree. Now, having said that, oh my God, that's a crazy road to climb because
Yeah,
when you think about the complex things human beings have to do, right, working with legacy systems and not necessarily knowing how to reinvent to a new future, and all the workarounds, all the escalations, all of the weird kind of human components to that, there is so many more miles to go before we feel like we're on the right road for this, which is why MIT then published that research about the fact that something like 95% of the AI projects that got running literally never produced any new value to the
yeah,
organization, but 5% did. Okay, well, so that's just early doors playing with new tools that frankly aren't probably ready for prime time anyway. But oh my God, are they catching up? I think
yeah,
that Claude Anthropic anyway, has launched, I kid you not, if this is a real number, I don't know, but something like 100 new applications over the course of the past 6 months. And I
yeah,
was like, is it really that many? It feels like it, mind you. It feels like it's
yeah,
like three a day that I get little blurbs on. Anyway, what is my point? My point is, A, these things have got to create value. What is the point? Why would a business invest in it otherwise? So that's a huge equation to solve for. The second thing is, what business problem are you solving for? Stop running around with your giant AI flag going, look, I know AI stuff. I'm going to do things with it. And it's like, stop. You don't lead with a piece of technology and
no,
start basically hammering every nail you see because you happen to be a hammer, right?
yeah,
You have to instead look at what the hell you're building in the first instance. It would require a nail to go in a certain spot and a hammer then to hit it to get it in. Like that's the
100%.
level of, to your point, orchestration.
Yeah,
And what I thought was really cool, Matt, when we got into our most recent conversations, and we're going to dive more deeply into the stuff now, you decided to start unpacking problems that businesses have that you saw over and over again in your work with UX consultancy. And I'm really interested to hear how it is you came about that because I want to kind of get into your product offering, which
yeah.
was this notion of everything, things die in your backlog, good
Yeah.
ideas in particular, and we don't want that to happen. But leading up to that, like how did you see this whole thing unfolding?
So I think, well, yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think for me, um, I don't think we can talk about recent AI innovation without talking about what happened at the end of last year. And at the end of last year,
Yeah,
OpenAI and Anthropic released what they call their reasoning models. So
right.
they released Opus and OpenAI 5.2, I think it was. I can't.
5.2. Yeah, that's right.
5.2.
Yeah,
And they're the reasoning models. So the difference between the models before and after that. So before that is the models before that, they could answer questions, they could respond to you, they could generate reasonably sounding outputs, but they couldn't do much. They didn't have what's called tool use.
got it.
And then the reasoning models, last November time, they came out and they were able um, to look at something that you had asked them to do, and then they could figure out what they might need to do to solve that, and then you could give them tools to solve that. So you could give them tools like uh, search the internet. So that could be a tool, or you could give them
Okay.
a tool like I don't know,
Great
use
websites
yeah,
and
scrape a
yeah,
website, use a computer, that type of stuff.
right,
And so in November time, that's when these reasoning models came out, and uh, most notably things like Claude Code. Before the reasoning models, Claude Code was a glorified autocomplete, really. So you would
right.
start writing code and it would just autocomplete the rest of it, or you could put in like slash slash and you could tell it, I want a function that will add two numbers together. And because of its predictive text, because of its generative text capability, is able to give you that function because it has seen it in its training data.
Got it.
Now, um, you can say, I want a web application to do X, Y, and Z, and it will use its code creation tools. It will use a bunch of other tools to reason the best way of delivering that, and it will build you a whole application. And that happened around November time. The other interesting thing is to say that developers, software developers being the curious and innovative bunch of people they are,
Yeah.
they then started to use this capability to a bunch of other things, like create PowerPoint presentations for them, organize their folders. They used to, manage to categorize the photographs on their computer and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, right.
They then started to use that in a more of a business context rather than coding context. And then in January, Anthropic released something called Claude Cowork, which
Right.
was the a really useful user interface layer over the top of Claude Code, so that people who aren't software developers can then start to use it to do business things, business
Yeah.
processes.
And
So
Matt, there was also this interlude that you and I had a lot of fun with, where there's this thing called Clawbot that got
yes,
created, right? And you were like, Jeff, check this out. And I was like checking it out, and I was like, what the hell? It's like
yeah,
literally basically software that kind of takes over an AI tool that just takes over your entire computer. And
absolutely,
basically you could talk to it, literally send a WhatsApp to it or a message or whatever
yeah.
the case,
So
and just say, go execute on this thing.
yeah,
And it would just do
yeah.
anything 24/7. And I
So
was like, yikes, this is
you,
this
you
is
mentioned
weird.
you mentioned earlier about the your 1984 moment
Yeah,
with Mac, and
yeah,
how suddenly computers went from being DOS terminals to being graphical user interfaces and really well thought out software. And that's exactly what Clawbot or OpenClaw or Maltbot or whatever
Nemo Club. Yeah, it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like all sorts, right?
That's what that piece of software did for AI, because
Yeah.
the guy that created that was a really it's a very interesting story about him. So um, he uh, he used to run a business that created this piece of software called like PDF um, tool or something like that. So
Okay.
basically, anytime a PDF was read or created or something through software, it was his piece of middleware that was being used. And he got
Got
it
it.
bought out. He made a fortune. He took
Yeah.
about 2 years off and didn't do anything with it. And then he kind of got into using AI. And
Right.
he missed that whole year of AI just being a little bit crappy and just being a little bit a lot, like predictive text. He got in
Yeah.
at the point the reasoning models were there. So he didn't know, he wasn't encumbered by legacy sort of delusions of,
Yeah.
what it should have been versus what it was. And he created this product. And all it really was, and I'm not belittling what he did at all, because what he did was amazing, but
Yeah.
literally what he did, two things that were absolutely innovative, and neither OpenAI nor Anthropic saw this coming. I'm
No,
convinced they didn't see it coming.
I agree.
And he basically, one, set up Claude Code to use a loop, so that
Right.
what it would do, it would just periodically it would loop round and it would say, what do you need me to do? What do you need me to do? And so you would tell it, you would give it a markdown file that might have a to-do list in or something in, and it would say, oh, I'm going to check the to-do list. Okay, I can do that. And then it would go off and do it for you, and it would send you a message saying, hey, I just did this thing off your to-do list. So it looked like magic, because
Yeah.
it was suddenly being proactive for you. It was doing things for you that it hadn't done before. So he started extending that. And the other thing that he did was he made these models available to you via text message. So he connected it to
Right.
Telegram, I think is what he used
Yeah,
originally.
that's right. Telegram.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's now connected. You can now connect it to a bunch of things.
And like all sorts. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, he then would send it a message. If he was out at a party and he wanted his AI to do something for him, he would send it a text message, and it would just get off and do it. And then it would send him a text message saying, "Oh yeah, that's done now." And so he through OpenClaw, he created the new future model for how
Yeah.
agentic AI could work.
Yeah, because when you and I were looking at it, one thing that immediately hit me was, oh my God, the security issues, right?
Yeah,
Like suddenly, and the guy built it with no security in it whatsoever, bless him. So like people were just like launching instances of this, giving it his credit card, saying like, go
yeah,
buy
yeah,
stocks for me and make $10 million, whatever. And it's like suddenly like they got ridiculous bills back and all sorts, as expected. That lasted like a week. And
yes,
then, and then there was the next headline we heard was Sam Altman went out and like bought this guy, just bought
yeah,
him, his brain, his claw bot, and everything else. And it was like, boom, this is what he was on about. and they were going to make this a product. The
Yeah.
next thing was a week later at the NVIDIA conference, the keynote speaker, right, Jensen Huang,
Yeah.
obviously, gets up there and says, "Hey, by the way, in addition to all of this crazy stuff we're doing, I have an update for you." And basically, what they've done is they so love the notion of what
Yeah.
Clawbot could do, they built NemoBot basically with all of the guardrails, all the safety features built in and baked into their chip, kind of like
Yeah.
designs. I was like, what is going on? Suddenly, this went from being like, isn't this kind of an oddity to it's now the new thing
Yeah.
in 3 weeks.
And of course, Claude has done, Anthropic have done exactly the same thing with Claude. So with Claude
Yeah,
now, you've got channels. So I can
yeah,
send messages to my Claude Code thing via iMessage, via Discord, and via Telegram. I've
right,
got remote sessions. I've now got scheduling and loops in Claude that I never had before. Now, and
right.
all of those things, um, they wouldn't have existed. I genuinely believe they wouldn't have existed without OpenClaw. Somebody needed to tip them over the edge to show them what this future could be. And
Okay.
coming back to, or just thinking a bit more about, the challenge that established businesses have with AI
Yeah,
and
exactly.
agentic AI, right? This space is moving so quickly. It's moving quickly, and every time, I mean, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I get 1,000 different messages on LinkedIn and via
All the
email
time.
saying, use this AI for this and use this AI for that. And I kind of, when I'm thinking about my clients and I'm thinking about the state that they're in and what they're doing at the moment, like a lot of my clients, they've literally just rolled out a test bed for a Microsoft Copilot. Like they've
Right.
just invited like 20 users out of a thousand 1,000 people company to just give it a go and see
Okay.
whether it's going to be useful. I'm not a lot of my clients, I'm not seeing them using or understanding how to use these tools in a way that is driving anywhere near that level of efficiency or
Yep.
level of future thinking with
Indeed.
people. There's risk, there's massive risk because if you are a massive financial services company, for example, and everyone just starts using Clawbot or Claw Code or any of
Whatever.
those
Oh
things,
God.
then
Yeah.
imagine the risk to your business of leaking, customer information, financial services data, all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. So there's a massive amount of risk around that. But so I understand the risk. What I also understand is that companies need a way of exploring and understanding these things to enable them to start to embed the capabilities and the skills and to find the people within their organizations who are going to be leading the revolution or the evolution of their business over the next 5 or 10 years. Because
Right.
this AI stuff is not going to go away because people have spent the tech companies, the investment companies, they've spent too much money on this tool in order for it not to succeed, right? It's not going
Like
away.
in the trillions.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
like a
not
mental amount of money.
it's
Yeah.
it's not like the whole metaverse thing where, one or two
Yeah.
companies are like, this is going to be really important. And then, no one took into
Yeah.
account the motion sickness that a lot of people feel when they're using virtual reality, for Christ's sake.
Right. Spot
But
on.
so
So that kind
it's
of then bleeds though into our discussion about this, right? Because when you and I were talking about what could we bring to market that would be super impactful that people could latch onto, and even the most out of touch, non-techie leader would look at and say, "Oh, right, okay, that makes loads of sense, actually. Yeah,
yeah.
let's give that a go." So tell me, like, yeah, how did you kind of like land on this, and how did this come about in your head?
So I think there are two things. Um, in all companies, there's more work than their ability to deliver.
Yeah,
And there are important pieces of work that they can never deliver. And the reason they can never deliver those types of pieces of work, those infrastructure projects, really is because they're too expensive and they take too long. And so I reasoned that what a lot of companies need is they need to think back to the good old days when innovation teams were all the rage. And what they need to start thinking about is how do we create an innovation mindset that enables us to prioritize and understand the things we need to do, and then with guardrails, use agentic AI technology to start to get those projects done and dusted and out the door as quickly as possible.
And it's not just the point of using AI for the sake of
No,
using
no, no,
AI. It's
no.
what these chains of
Yeah,
capability ultimately
yeah,
put together, yeah, can
abs
deliver.
absolutely. I run a user experience consultancy. I do not run an AI company.
Right.
I'm not interested in running an AI company, but what I am interested in doing, if I hark back to my accelerated digital delivery stuff that we mentioned earlier, what I
Yeah,
am interested in doing is finding and utilizing the right tools so that we're able to deliver better software, better products to our customers that improve our customers' lives and to our business, improve business value. That's what I'm
got it.
interested in, right?
Cool.
That's my bottom line. For me, utilizing tools like Claude Code um, has two benefits. The
Okay.
first benefit is that it enables people to do things that they aren't able to do uh, normally, quicker and more efficiently, because you are outsourcing some of that work to the AI models to deliver, and they are very capable of delivering very complex pieces of software now.
Indeed.
Um, the other thing that I'm interested in is if we are in a place where we are expanding capacity within an organization through the use of these tools. So people who were doing certain things are not going to do them anymore. So I think what we should be looking at is how we can find things for those people to do that drive more value for them and for the businesses that they work for. So I'm
Agreed.
not in any way uh, um, aligned to this whole AI washing, staff redundancy stuff. I do not
Right.
understand. I physically, like, I absolutely do not understand why, if a business can reduce busy work by 30%, say, that you then aren't repurposing the people that are free to do stuff that generates more value, spend more time with customers to understand their problems, to try and solve problems that you've not been able to get around to solving before,
Yeah.
to make processes and systems more efficient. Why wouldn't you invest in that whilst you're getting those efficiency gains? It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So that's the position we come from, right? That's my positioning on this, is that first
Which,
and
by the
foremost,
way, is not just sort of a purist, wonderful, moral, high ground that you found yourself on. The truth of the matter is, just being perfectly selfish and a bit I guess capitalistic about this, really, is that these are people who have developed a level of institutional knowledge about how your company works, about where all the skeletons are buried, if you will, about how to get stuff done when things break. Those are frankly your true incredible, kind of gems
100%.
that look, there is no AI that goes and solves that for you
Yeah,
because it doesn't have that context. It doesn't have
yeah.
that concept or whatever. But then to
And
kind
this
of
is,
empower those people with AI in addition to it, oh my
yeah.
God, can you
Well,
imagine yeah.
this is the thing, right? When you've got a tool, when everybody's got access, as we do currently, to the same tools, to the same AI tools,
Mhm.
your ability to compete is not going to be based upon the technology at all, because we've all got
Right.
access to the same technology.
That's right.
That playing field has been leveled. The only thing that is going to mean that you can compete in the future is going to be the experience and the context that you can apply to those tools to drive better outcomes. And so
Right.
we always talk about um, how can we use your subject matter experts plus our AI UX
Yeah,
development expertise
indeed.
with these AI tools to drive better value for you. Because the key is the quality of the people that you are using to drive those tools. Because and the understanding of the systems, the processes, the user needs, the business needs, and stuff like that. That's the stuff
Sure.
that AI is never going to be able to do for you. So we always talk about, so this, Jeff, the reason that we're working together now is because what we recognize is that your expertise very specifically in HR and operations and things like that, it's that level of expertise plus the AI that is
Yeah.
going to drive value for the customers that we interact with. I could give the same AI capabilities to a junior software developer and to a senior software developer. And I absolutely guarantee you that the senior software engineer, because of their experience, will drive better outcomes than the junior software developer will. And
Sure.
that's not to discredit those people without experience. We need a mechanism to give those people the experience they need in
Yeah.
order to drive better outcomes. But the reality is that expertise, context, and tool use is the thing that is going to set you as a business out apart from everyone else.
I like that. Expertise, context, and tool use. That's really interesting. Yeah, I'd never really kind of thought about it that way, but you're absolutely spot on. You're absolutely spot on. Matt, in the waning minutes that we have, not that we're not going to kind of go revisit this, because I think your methodology is really sound, and I think it's well worth a deeper exploration. But what would be sort of the typical engagement now in terms of, your focus on this issue of good ideas die in your backlog and
Yeah,
and that whole kind of like that whole journey. Can you just kind of whip us through that and then we'll go into more detail in another sesh?
I will do. So we have this product that we call agentic innovation, which is it needs a better name because um, but anyway, the point that there are two key phases to it. The first is what would traditionally be called an ideation session. So we would work with our clients to understand all the items in the backlog, to prioritize them, to identify the ones that have genuine business value in. And so we do it across two levels. If you were to evaluate these problems right now, what would be most important and what would be the most urgent? And if you were to do the same in 12 months' time, what would be the most important, what would be the most urgent? Where those two quadrants overlap, that gives you an idea about what your most important initiatives are.
Got it.
Then what we do is we prioritize the list of those lists of features, systems, processes, whatever they are. We prioritize those, and then we take one of those things and we move into our sort of agentic delivery sprint. So basically,
Right.
that's where your SMEs, our clients' SMEs, will sit in a room with us, with our user experience people, with our engineering people, whoever is appropriate to solve that problem, and
Okay.
we will basically brainstorm what does this solution look like? How would we solve this problem? So we might put up on a whiteboard the user journeys that we're going to complete. We might put up the rules, the technology stacks we're going to use, and that context, that information then becomes the thing that is the spec that will drive our ability to use AI to deliver those outcomes for you. And
And you
so,
know what I like about that, Matt, is the fact that you take a UX kind of approach. In other words,
absolutely,
let's not go create something for the sake of creating something because we think technically it's cool,
yeah,
or it's going to do a thing without really kind of involving, the people who are going to be most affected by it. We're going to build something that people love, that people will
absolutely.
engage with and really enjoy. And I think that's, a real interesting differentiation.
And that's the point again, right? So the reason we put UX and technology in that room is and business, which is the SME, the client's SME,
Yeah.
is it comes back to that three-legged stool again, doesn't it? Because if we
Yeah.
get those three people together and then we say, okay, how do we solve this problem? What is the outcomes that we need to drive? We then work. So our user experience people tend to work on the front end with agentic, with Claude Code or Codex
Yeah.
5.5,
Whatever is most
5.3,
appropriate. Right. Yep.
whatever the agentic tool is. We will
Mhm.
work with that. They will create the information. So we go into this really tight 2 week cycle where we have playback sessions every 2 days, and we iterate, test, iterate, test, iterate, test. Get to the end of it, then we do proper bona fide usability testing
Okay.
to evaluate whether what has been created is delivering the sort of user needs values that we anticipated upfront.
Got
And
it.
so you go from basically you can go from an idea to a testable product over the course of that 2 week process. And
In
then
2 weeks.
yeah, in 2 weeks.
How long does it typically take in your experience, prior to sort of AI agents being involved and things of that nature to kind of
I
get to
mean,
this?
you would have multiple. I think I remember reading a stats recently. I mean, the minimum software development life cycle is 12 sprints. So that was that
12 sprints, blimey.
12 times two
Yeah,
weeks,
yeah.
24 weeks typically
Right,
is a standard. To give you an example, um, 5 years ago, we built a, digital employee experience mobile app for one of our clients.
right.
We've been working on that on and off for that whole of that time. I mean, it took us a year, I think, probably to get to the first uh, feature complete version of that product.
Right.
We had another client come to us and said, "Oh, we'd like a bit of that, please." We're like, "Oh yeah, fair enough. Okay, good." One of my guys decided that he wanted to re-platform it from being a React Native app to a native iOS and Android app, and he managed to get it done and connected to all the existing endpoints and admin systems and all that sort of stuff in 1 month.
Gosh.
So
Wow.
he created two. So he basically did in a month. Obviously, we had a lot of the back end stuff already available to us, but he managed
Sure.
to create two mobile native Android and iOS apps in 1 month. And um, we have just started the process of replatforming all the back end systems, and we will have gone a completely brand new instance of that app will have taken us 8 weeks in total.
Oh my God. So this is what's happening, isn't it? These tools are basically helping us compress timelines
Yeah.
that we can never ever do on our own. But it's
And
also forcing a powerful human interaction challenge too, isn't it? To kind of make
yeah.
sure that we get it
And
done right.
and Jeff, this is really important, right? This is
Yeah.
why this agentic innovation, why this innovation process is really important. There are many, many, many projects inside every business that people will not touch because it's going to take years and
Mhm.
tens of thousands, millions of pounds worth of change of money
Sure.
to change. You're never going to do it. They are intractable problems that you cannot solve, that every company works around the edges of. And
Yeah.
and it's impacting their growth to be able to do it. It's something they have to acknowledge that they can't work around. With these tools, those problems move from being intractable to just difficult. And
Right.
difficult problems can be solved.
Yeah.
And so if you can imagine that, I don't know, let's say you're a client that's got a customer database that has been structured in the wrong way.
Right.
Um, but you've had it there for years. You've had it there for years because when it was built, that was the best way of solving that problem and you did the right thing. But over the course of the last 10, 20 years or whatever, it's become completely, the wrong data model, for example.
Okay. All right.
Most company, you just live with that legacy. But
Yeah.
if you could now use these tools to do data migrations to refactor, rebuild that database. And that's going to take you months. It might take you months and months, but it's not going to take you years and years. It might
Right.
take you tens of thousands of pounds, but it's not going to take you millions of pounds. If
Got
you
it.
can then solve those problems, which I think it's absolutely achievable right now, if you've got the right people using the right tools in the right way, you could solve those problems now. You could solve complex problems now.
Right.
Imagine the new opportunities you could create within your business that you were never able to create before.
It feels to me like you literally can start regenerating huge chunks of your business. You know what I mean? And just
I
start to rethink how it works and integrates and everything
I
else.
I genuinely believe that, and I genuinely
Wow.
believe that that is only possible because you're using the experience and the capability that already exists within your business, aligned with the
Yeah.
experience and capability of the people that can help you deliver this. And then the other thing through our framework we work very closely with with the people that we're working with so that
Yeah.
they're learning how to do this for themselves. We aren't doing it, we aren't taking it away and doing it for you. We're doing
Right.
it with you. It's a test bed for you to learn how to implement these agentic capabilities within your own business so that you can then start to develop the guardrails, to start to develop the policies and all that sort of stuff that you need in order to make sure that you can keep doing this into the future. And that's the
That's
value,
huge.
right?
Yeah. That is value because look, the bottom line is you don't need to be greedy. in this particular moment at all, right?
No.
We are not talking about scarcity. We are talking about a ridiculous abundance, like a universe full of abundance in terms of the possibilities and the things that can go get
100%.
done. So it's critical, I think, at this particular juncture, number one, to train and upskill people like Matt, right? And really get everybody
Yeah.
kind of on the same page with that. Number two, to your point, to give back, the secrets of your methodology, to say to them,
Yeah.
you can do this. This is not alien. We we are not from another planet speaking another language here. It might feel like that for the first couple of days, but we're going to tune you up and
Yeah.
we're going to get you
Absolutely.
plugged in and then we're going to get you launching some stuff. But let's go ahead and do some things, some proofs of concept. Let's show you how it gets done and what impact that has. And I think
100%.
that is why, in part, amongst other things, I love working with you because I think that level of generosity and again an abundance mindset I think is really going to set UX consultancy apart, right? In terms of the positive benefits that can kind of accrue from that kind of a relationship.
Yeah. I hope so. And I mean, that's exactly why, after all these years of knowing each other, we can come together on this because that's
Yeah,
exactly your mindset when it comes to, all of the work that you do with, in HR, with the,
yeah,
the sort of learning programs that you help create and all that sort of stuff. And it's like
yeah,
it's you get to a point where your level of expertise is the thing that can help to drive value elsewhere within everyone
yeah.
else's business. And that's why we're taking that approach at UX Consultancy, because we're saying, you know, we're a partnership with you. We want to help to give you the tools and the mindset and the approach to enable you to do this for yourself. But the bottom line is we all need to start practicing these things now,
Spot on.
because we'll get to a point in a couple of years' time, 2, 3 years' time maybe, when not having learned how to do this now is going to become very difficult for us to compete in the future. And this
Yeah,
is and this comes back to the whole reason why I started on this, and that's because I don't want all these great businesses that employ all these thousands of people, tens of thousands of people across the businesses, to become obsolete, to go out of business because they haven't had the ability to
yeah.
learn how to do this now.
That's right. That's right. And it's not rocket science, is it? I mean, I'm a non-techie and I picked this stuff up and I suddenly realized, oh, okay, this is how you talk to a computer,
Yeah,
right? And then the cool thing about it is, if you don't know, you ask the computer. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know,
and it tells you.
teach me, learn me,
Yeah,
catch me up. And it's like, no worries, here you go.
yeah,
It's like all the
100%.
answers are there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Matt, you have been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it, mate. Are there any parting messages you have before we kind of like close episode one here
I think
and prep
just
for the next one?
if anything we've spoken about resonates, just give Jeff a call, because we're
Yeah,
very happy to sit down with you and talk about this in more detail. This is a conversation. It's not um, it's not us preaching at you.
and
We're
it's not a
here.
hard sell thing.
No,
It's
no, no.
it's a if it's a right marriage and a decent partnership and it makes sense for us to play together, then yeah, amazing. That's awesome. But this is not at all going to be sort of the fanboy, hey, AI, blah blah blah, kind of routine. This is very much about the future of how we work and how we build and how we create. So yeah, that'll be cool. Nice
100%.
one. Lovely.
Cool.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Matt.
you.
And we'll be in touch very, very soon and get episode two under our belt.
Brilliant.
All right, mate. Thank
Cool.
you. Take
Thank you, buddy.
care.
Is that all right? All good.